Hello everyone. Oh, it's been quite challenging to go live and to have internet in Portugal. I don't know if you can see me. Can you hear me? I hope so. So I'm on my holidays in Portugal. It's my second week. I still have 1 week left. Sorry, I need to create a closed space. And yeah, it's been a challenging day. I'm not sure it's Mercury retrograde, but even my trip from the north, from Serra da Estrela to the south to Alentejo, has been challenging with a lot of roundabouts that were leading nowhere. Then we turn around. So nice to see you. I hope you hear me, and I hope you are able to assist to this live. I have a slow internet connection. I'm still using my roaming from my internet original source in Norway, connecting to countries. And I'm connecting all over the world with you in this amazing initiative of Janice, and I thank her for the invitation. My talk will be about the 3 gates of initiation into a woman's life in the search of the Grail, that I would call a kind of pilgrimage. Because our life, when it is lived from this inner essence and flavor that our womb carries, is a kind of pilgrimage. And we have 3 major gates or opportunities to learn something about ourselves and to evolve even more through these 3 gates. And in particular, they are the first menstruation and the menarche phase of our life, when we start to be initiated into womanhood and adulthood, becoming fertile. Then the second gate is when from the stage of lover we become mothers and we give birth to life through our kids or through many different projects, ideas and dreams. And then the third gate is when we stop in being fertile at a physical level, so our womb doesn't release eggs anymore to be fecundated and to create life through babies, and it prepares for menopause, when woman becomes the wise version of herself, the one ready to serve others, to help community with her own wisdom, experience, with her own service. And I wish to share with you my personal stories of this pilgrimage, because this notion of sacredness that we carry in our body, in our womb, only became obvious for me 10 years ago, when I started to connect more with myself and with this space that is indeed sacred, as it carries so much life and the energy of creation itself, and also when I started to work with other women. And the first 2 gates of initiation for me have been quite traumatic. And of course, this happened because there was already a background of traumatization coming also from the past, from my matrilineage and the lineage of my father too, but also because somehow I was exposed to certain events in my life, starting even from conception, during the pregnancy of my mother, at birth and after, that brought some trauma. And many of these events, they had a huge impact on my womb reality. So they generated also a lot of suffering and struggle during these 2 periods of my life. So I don't have a real clear remembering when I got my menstruation, but I know it was between 11 and 12. And what I remember from that period, beyond the excruciating pain, physical pain I always felt before the menstruation and during the menstruation, It was that I didn't have any real support or encouragement. I was not prepared for this event, and when it happened, I was somehow curious about it. Of course, there was a lot of pain associated, so I had to rest a little bit more. And I remember that at the time we were still living under communist regime, and we didn't have the pads, textile or of another material that we have nowadays in modern times. So my mother would give me just some cotton, normal cotton, to use as a pad with some hygienic paper. And I was always afraid that the blood could spill out, and sometimes would happen, and my clothes will be dirty. And I carried this kind of fear of shaming myself, especially when I was going to school. And I still have this remembering of always being very careful about where I sit, how I sit when, and how I dress when I was in my menstrual time, in my moon time at school. And this, of course, created the sensation of being ashamed if anything would happen and the blood would become visible to others. But beyond this, what was really heavy for that period of my life, it was the fact that the bleeding was bringing so much physical pain. Many times I would have to go home from school, and I even remember several times I fainted because of the big pain, a very strong pain. And so the start into womanhood for me was marked by this pain, and somehow I grew up with this idea that a woman needs to suffer just because she sheds blood every month. And even my father and even people in my environment, they were not able to understand my pain, or they would just say, take a pill, it will pass, just lay down for one day in bed and then it will get better. And this is how it is for a woman. So they consider this like normal. Although there were other ladies of my age or older women who would not have this kind of issue. And often I would actually end in hospital because ultimately, to calm this huge pain, they would give me painkillers. And none of them was able to think that there should be a source or a cause for this pain, not just the menstruation itself. So I grew up with this understanding that a woman, just because she's bleeding monthly, she's cursed to live this and her own femininity associated with pain. And later on, through life, I tried to cope with this. I only become aware that I might be affected by a kind of disease that is called endometriosis, that has to do with blood clots that emigrate from the womb, from the lining, into different other organs in our pelvic bowl, very late, actually maybe 5 or 6 years ago, when I connected with a woman who was trained into understanding the menstrual cycle and also all the issues and symptoms related with it. And she told me I might have it. But as being already in the phase of perimenopause, it was already too late to maybe do some more intervention like surgery or other kind of interventions. Although, from what I know from discussion with other women interested in the topic, there are not so many solutions from a medical point of view to effectively cure this, and many women still suffer of it. But there are solutions, and there is medicine of all sorts, including the shamanic medicine of the womb, where through a series of practices and even natural herbal remedies and yoni steaming and rituals and so on, you can at least mitigate and the severity of the symptoms. Because I know many women, as me, they still suffer. For me, it went better after my son was born. And now I'm almost in menopause, so it is getting somehow better because I'm preparing my body for ending with the menstrual blood. But now I was thinking to speak about the other stage of initiation where I miss to have been better informed and also to have more assistance, also from community of women. And that was my pregnancy with my son and also his birth. And starting with the second half of my pregnancy, I was already almost 38, so quite in age for having a baby. It was my firstborn. And until birth, there was a lot of confusion at the time in my life. Confusion brought by his father, unfortunately. That's why after his birth, 2 weeks after, I decided to separate myself from the father of my son. And then I became a single mother. But the confusion was brought because at the time I did that exam from placenta, when they can examine to look into possible malformation for the baby, or trisomy issues or other kinds of issues that can be genetic too. And the results showed there was a genetic modification on 2 chromosomes in the fetus, in my son, that I was carrying in my womb. And then me and his father, we had to do this test for the blood. And we discovered that he was inheriting this change in chromosomes from his father. And the doctors didn't know to explain what could this be, what kind of risk this would bring. They just say it might be, doesn't manifest, but you need still to think about and maybe reflect and take a decision if you want to continue with the pregnancy or not. So for 1 week, I was extremely stressed and in pain. We were both in pain as parents because we didn't know very well what to do. But then when they told us it might not manifest, then I took the risk and I said, I want this baby. I want it very much, a son. We have it. And then we will see what will be next. And so I delivered the baby. It had to be a last-minute C-section because he was very big. My waters broke when I arrived at hospital. I was planned to be the third one, and I was the first in the morning of Monday. And everything was quite smooth during the C-section. But I got my epidural or the anesthesia for the lower part of the body. I didn't feel much, but the pain came back after. During the 4 days, I had to stay in the hospital together with my baby, and it was physical pain from the C-section, from the fact they cut my belly in a transversal way. It was the emotional pain because I was processing a lot of emotional conflict because of some situations that were stressful with the father. It was psychological pain also because my son was always crying because he was hungry and I couldn't feed him properly as I had a malformation in my nipples, but also because all the stress I endured in that period, in the last part of my pregnancy, eventually stopped my milk, so I couldn't breastfeed. So I felt like for some parts of this becoming a mother, for this rite of passage, I was failing. I was failing because physical issues. Sorry, I'm trying to see sometimes what time is it so I don't exceed the time I have. Because a lot of trauma that was present at psychological and emotional level in that moment due to certain circumstances, as I said. But also, I didn't know at that moment that this sensation of failure was probably something that I was also carrying in my womb from all the women of the matrilineage, starting with my mother, because there were stories about their own pregnancies and their own deliveries of babies that might not have been so happy. So there was all sorts of causes and circumstances where I felt I could not enjoy this moment of the birth of my son that was supposed to be a happy moment. And to be able to survive to this trauma, to the impact of all these happenings, I had to disconnect from my womb. And for a huge while, I was very depressed, but I refused to admit it because I was telling myself, I'm a single parent now. I'm living in Portugal, not in my home country. I don't have family here. My mother came to stay with me after. the baby was born, but still I was alone with him, with very few friends, with no community, no real community. And I was telling myself, I cannot afford to be depressed. I cannot afford to not function, because someone needs to work and to provide for this newborn, as his father was not able and probably didn't even want to contribute a lot. So these two first gates for me were all about pain and trauma. And only later, when I started to work with myself and when I started to dive into the womb reality, I understood why. I understood all this past and how the past affected me, and how invisible trauma and hidden mechanism of loyalty towards my ancestral lineage, and especially the mothers in the lineage, affected the way I was handling as a woman, as a womb carrier, my own story, my own life. And recently, I had a very beautiful moment. I was invited by a friend who has a daughter who just got her first menstruation, so she started the menarche, to the celebration of this. So we did a rite of passage, a short ceremony in the woods for her daughter. Several women of different ages that are her friends were invited, and I was one of them. And in that occasion, I was very happy to be able to be part of this, but at the same time sad, because I realized I never had this, and I would have liked. And I probably don't have other chances because I have a son, not a daughter. So it would be difficult to initiate him in the first menstruation. In any case, I made a promise on this occasion that it feels quite important for the stage and the gate I'm now, because I'm very close to cross this gate towards menopause. And this promise is that when this will happen and I will finally step into the age of the crone, or the start of this age, because it will last several years, until the last rite of passage, that is death, I made a promise that I will throw a big party, and that will be the rite of passage for my own menopause. And then for sure I will celebrate it with women that are important for me, women from my own environment. And what I want to say before I will end this is that it's never too late to acknowledge the relevance of these three gates of initiation in your life. And if you, as me, you didn't get the chance to celebrate as rite of passage, as a rite for transition from a phase to another, at the first menstruation and at the moment where you became a mother, maybe you are not a mother at all, so you might not even be, but still, you can be mother to kids that are spiritual kids to you, or mother to kids in your family because you raised them. There are many different ways to mothering. I can tell you there is still a chance when you reach menopause, or if you are still very young and you want to have kids, remember that you might want to celebrate with other women in your community or from your family or group of friends the moment you become a mother. And it's not about the baby shower, because this in some countries does not even exist. It is simply about understanding that becoming a woman, it's a huge act of reinvention, of initiation into something where you are changing from the depth of your essence, from the depth of your womb, and when the energy of your heart needs to be connected. Because otherwise, living in disconnection and not acknowledging this moment will create many issues in your life, and even in relationship to your kids. I still remember how many years I was in search for myself. And I was lucky enough that 1 year after my son was born, I was still negating myself and negating that I was depressed. And then I was guided somehow to meet plant medicines. And that plant medicine, I still remember I was here in Portugal and I went into an ayahuasca retreat for a weekend. The plant medicines opened the gates towards me reconnecting with who I am, with everything I was accumulating inside and was only burdening me. And from that moment, I started to heal step by step that depression that I was trying to suppress. Because in my mind, in the state of disconnection I was thinking that I cannot afford it. If at that moment I would have known what I know today, I would have gone to a psychotherapist and deal with it, or to a shaman to just help me release what I was carrying. But at that moment, I didn't, and I didn't have enough support around me to guide me towards someone or something that would help me reconnect. But it was my son who was the catalyst for this reconnection, and it took several years until I could finally say, now I know who I am. Now I'm a better mother and a better woman too. And I cannot say I'm fully healed. There are many things to still heal. The womb is a big cauldron, but is it of mysteries, of pain, of burdens? But when we start to open it, it becomes our grail. Because it is not about finding the object, the sacred grails of the Arthurian legends. It is about finding ourselves and meeting ourselves into this space, daring to step into our power, inner knowing from this place, always through the lens of our heart. And I always invite those who want to listen to what I have to say, to my story, my personal story, to also look into themselves and find this sacredness, even if it's difficult at first. Even if it's something yet you might want to discard, as I was doing when I was discarding my own depression. Because it is possible to alchemize. Every womb, no matter how burdened or how traumatized, has this amazing gift of alchemy. We are all priestesses of the womb as women when we acknowledge all these phrases and how important they are as gates of our own pilgrimage into life. If you want to know more about my work, just go on www.palomablanca.ro, and under creative projects, I prepared for you a beautiful ebook. I'm going to also post to this live the link of it, where I speak about menarche. I speak about the start and development of motherhood, and also about perimenopause as the three great gates of the Sacred Grail pilgrimage, our womb. I thank you for listening. I hope there were not many interruptions because internet was very problematic today here. I send you warm greetings from the heart of Alentejo region in Évora, a UNESCO city, beautiful one. Come here if you didn't visit. And enjoy the rest of your summer and holidays if you are on holidays. Thank you. Blessings and hugs from Portugal. Bye-bye.